Last night I saw Nomadland, and I want to record a video because, as far as I'm aware, everyone I know who's seen Nomadland lives in another country, and Nomadland is the kind of film that you really need to discuss once you've seen it. So I am just going to record my thoughts. I don't have a script. I'm going to be umming and ahhing a lot, but that's fine because the dialogue in Nomadland was, I believe, mostly unscripted. So it's actually an homage, and if you don't get that, then that's on you. Uh, I want to start by saying I really normally wouldn't like a film like Nomadland. I'm not especially interested in films that don't have a strong plot or a strong narrative. Annoyingly, when you say that to a lot of people, what they say, their immediate response is always the same thing. They're like, "Oh, what? Do you want bombs going off?" It's always that same idea of bombs going off. And no, I don't need bombs going off, but I do want like an actual plot and narrative, something that is, like a through line. I'm not really into slice of life stuff. That's not what I want when I go to the cinema. When I go to watch a movie, I don't want to just watch things happening for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That being said, I do think that Nomadland succeeds at being slice of life because of the documentary aspect. I never know how much people know about films going in because I'm a bit obsessive. I read a lot about films that are coming up, especially films that are tipped for Oscars. More on that later. So as soon as I heard about Nomadland, the thing I heard about Nomadland was the kind of documentary blending aspect. And in case you're not aware, because I don't know if everyone is, um, Nomadland features Frances McDormand, very accomplished, talented, awarded, fated actress, playing a character called Fern, who is a modern day nomad who lives in a van, drives around taking itinerant work where she can, um, you know, uh, living a very kind of, in some ways, quite small, um, un, uh, unorthodox life. And actress Frances McDormand is surrounded by actual real life nomads, people who actually do this um, for their real lives, who drive around in vans and take itinerant work and blah blah blah. And she Frances McDormand actually did live that way for a time for the making of the film. She was followed around by cameras, obviously, so I imagine it wasn't exactly the same. Also, obviously, she could just quit and go back to being a huge award fated actress whenever she wanted to. But yes, she did actually live as a van dwelling nomad for a time, and she followed around, or she was surrounded by people who do this in reality, real life van dwelling nomads who were also captured by the cameras, just living their normal everyday lives. And that's what's really interesting is the presentation of the real life people and their stories. And that is why Nomadland succeeds to me, where other films that try to have this same kind of, oh, just look at how this is a film exploring this particular subculture, these people's way of lives, don't really work for me because Nomadland blends in the documentary, the real people talking about their lives, doing living their lives. However, that is a double-edged sword. I don't want to impugn the intentions or even the actions of Chloe Zhao, who directed, or Frances McDormand, who starred in and produced the film. I genuinely, from everything I've read, they didn't do anything wrong. They were completely no one, none of the people none of the real life nomads who featured in the film have come forward and said, "Oh, I was manipulated," or I thought this was unfair. As far as I know, they all acted very admirably, and I do think they had good intentions. To me, there is a certain ghoulish aspect to real life movie star Frances McDormand driving around in a van, living like a nomad, and juxtaposing that with people who are not living that way to make a film, but are living that way because that is what they have chosen to do. I don't know anyone who lives in this nomadic way. I genuinely don't. The film definitely presents the idea that most of the people who live that way do so because of some kind of sadness in their lives, because of some sadness in their past. All A lot of the nomads who are given the chance to do not an interview, because, as I said, Frances McDormand is not just going around interviewing people. She is playing a nomad, so it's people talking to her as though she is this character, Fern. And in all the interviews that they give, all these nomads have some kind of deeply sad story about why they started living as nomads. So the film is kind of presenting the idea that people would only do this because some kind of sadness removes them from what we would think of as an orthodox way of life. And to me, I should explain, Frances McDormand's character, her backstory is that it's based on a real person, I believe. Her backstory is that she lived in a town which was it was a company town. It was a town where basically everyone worked in one industry, which was U.S. gypsum's sheetrock mining processing, and then that was discontinued, and the entire town just vanished within 6 months. Everyone left. The postcode was discontinued because there was no work, because it was in the middle of nowhere. And also, Frances McDormand's husband died before that, some unspecified amount of time before that. And Frances McDormand decided to become. She describes herself not as homeless, but as houseless, because she says she lives in her van. That's her home. Fair enough. It's quite a nice line. That backstory is very sad, and as I said, someone I believe did live through that. Frances McDormand did not live through that. I don't know how famous Frances McDormand is. I've done a bit of reading around the film. Some of the articles were sourced, some of them were not. And from what I can tell, apparently most of the people involved with the project, when they were interviewed, either never knew or just did not recognize Frances McDormand. I think I would recognize Frances McDormand if I met her, even if she was, in method actor role as unglamorous, normal person. I feel I would recognize her, but maybe someone I know is already Frances McDormand. Oh my god, that would be amazing. But yeah, Frances McDormand presented herself as this character Fern with this sad backstory, and from what I can tell from doing reading around the film, people believed her and they opened up to her and they said, "Oh, well, I also have a sad backstory." And they gave their sad backstory on camera because I think they thought that she was shooting a documentary. Those people's sad backstories are true. Frances McDormand's is not. As I said, I think that everyone was disabused of the notion that this was real for her. I think that everyone gave their consent to be in the film with what they had said on camera. To me, though, knowing that Frances McDormand is a quite successful actress with a living husband who I'm fairly certain has a house, to me it's very, it's not, it's ghoulish. As I said, it feels um unfair to juxtapose these two stories. That being said, Frances McDormand plays this extremely well. If I didn't know who Frances McDormand was, I can see how I would, quote unquote, fall for this deception, because she does play it very well. She doesn't play it in an actory way. She plays it in a normal person way. She is phenomenal. She blends right in to the milieu of these ordinary people. And I think that is more difficult to do than sometimes we give it credit for, to play like a person who is, yeah, just kind of, normal, ordinary, everyday. Um, I'm normally not a fan of lauding acting when people say, oh, they were really doing it. Like with The Revenant, when Leonardo DiCaprio was going to win his Oscar, and everyone was like, well, he he really waded into freezing cold water and he ate raw meat. And he's not acting then, is he? That's not acting. Um, but with Frances McDormand, I think it's different, because it's not that she, lived in a van and, did all these horrible menial labor jobs. It's that she interacted with real people and kept the character up while she was doing it. That's what I think is the impressive acting of that. So yes, kudos to Frances McDormand. She plays it very well. To me, there is something not quite right about the juxtaposition of this, or this real life unhappiness versus this kind of constructed unhappiness. I kind of wish that they'd actually just made a documentary, that they had just had interviews. They had maybe framed it as, real life, fantastically successful actress Frances McDormand is going to live like this for a little while to, really explore it. And also she will, where she can, capture interviews with these real life people. That's not what they did. And I can see why. In some ways, the fictional aspects of the film do add to the overall experience. To me, not greatly. I still think a documentary could have, in some ways, been more successful. There is one aspect that I want to talk about, because it's to me it's a bit funny. So there is a nomad in the film called Dave, who is played by actor David Strathairn, who I think I've seen in something else. I didn't recognize him, and I thought he was one of the non-actor, quote unquote, normal people nomads who, just kind of populates the film. Which either means that he's a terrible actor or an amazing one. I think we'll go with amazing. But it's very funny, because he has a sort of semi-romantic plot line with Frances McDormand's character, and I was sitting there thinking, God, I don't think that's right. That's quite manipulative. I don't like that. Oh, that poor man, he doesn't know what's happening. And I went home, looked it up, and was like, yes, he did. He was playing a character. Whoops. Yes. From what I can tell, almost all of the cast, apart from Frances McDormand, are not actors. If you look at the credits at the end, um, almost everyone has the same first name as the character they are quote unquote playing. So I think I think that they're mostly just not actors. Apart from Frances McDormand, David slash Dave, who does have the same first name, which is why I got confused. Um, the woman playing um, Frances McDormand's sister has a separate name, and the woman playing Frances McDormand's brother-in-law has a different name. So I think those are the three actors. Um, so the documentary aspect. If Nomad wins Best Picture at the Oscars, as everyone thinks it will that make it the first documentary to win Best Picture? In a very technical sense, no, because it's not being billed as a documentary. It was not nominated for Best Documentary at this Oscars. It's being billed as a docudrama, which obviously has docu in it, but is not the same as documentary. However, I would argue that this is a documentary. It has a couple of fictional aspects that are, by and large, not, to me, the main draw of the film. Um, and there is a lot in this film that I think most people would consider straight documentary. These things really happened. We caught them on camera. Look at them, and not in the Revenant way of look at Leonardo DiCaprio eating raw meat like a freak. Not that kind of way. Just actually like look at this real life thing that happens. Isn't this interesting? So I would argue that in that way, Nomadland is a documentary, and if it wins Best Picture, it would be a Best Picture winner that is a documentary. However, this is where it gets interesting to me, and probably only to me. There is another Best Picture winner that has featured large swathes of documentary footage, which is The Greatest Show on Earth, the Best Picture winner that nobody likes. It's often cited as the worst Best Picture winner. It's just a circus. It's just a film about a circus, and it features documentary footage of the real Ringling Brothers circus at the time. And The Greatest Show on Earth has a lot more fictionalization in it. The Greatest Show on Earth has a much stronger plot and lots of actors playing fictional characters. So the proportions are definitely not equal. You could not say that, oh, well, it's a one-to-one correlation. No. Simply put, there is a lot more of The Greatest Show on Earth that is fictional than of Nomadland. However, to me, if we accept Nomadland as documentary, we kind of have to accept Greatest Show on Earth as documentary as well. I think we should, because to me, as someone who loves to memorize Oscar stats, because I'm just a nerd, it's what gives me joy in this world. Don't judge me. I'm always interested in like diversifying the what kind of films have won Best Picture, and if the Academy will not diversify it for us, we must find a way to diversify it ourselves. Is Shape of Water science fiction? Yes, because then a science fiction film has won Best Picture. That's my kind of feeling on it. So I would say, yes, Nomadland is a documentary in parts, and that means if it wins, 2 documentaries will have won Best Picture. Ooh, exciting. Yeah. I really did like Nomadland. It really impacted me. Um, it is just incredibly well made. Um, it says a lot without, having to actually say much, which is always admirable. The cinematography is beautiful. Um, the stories are heartfelt. Frances McDormand is amazing, and yeah, it taught me something about the world that I didn't know before. What more could you ask for? Well, maybe bombs going off.